What's up? Welcome to tubrepairstore.com. Today we're going to be installing a floor crack repair kit. Like and subscribe if you like this content. If you have any questions, comment below, give us a call. I hope we can save you a ton of money. Okay, here is our standard floor crack. This is about 6 inches long. They've used flex tape to seal it up. That can work for temporarily to keep water out, but it's not going to add support, and it is going to get that crack. It's going to get bigger. So I caution you on that. Here we're using a 5/16 inch drill bit, and I'm just going to drill. I start by drilling out both ends of the crack. So watch as I'm drilling. You see how I hit some resistance. I go through the floor of the shower, I hit resistance, then I go through the support board, and then I get to the subfloor. So watch, I'm drilling, I go through the floor of the shower, right there, I hit resistance, and then I go through one more time, and I hit the subfloor. So that is shallow layer support and deep layer support, okay? Shallow layer support is right here where I go through the shower floor, I hit the support board, and there's about a 1/4 inch gap in there. A lot of times that is going to be that's going to be present. So you need to be aware of that shallow layer support. So that's what I'm doing. I went deep layer support on either end of the crack, and then shallow layer support on the sides there. Now, I'm pumping foam, so you see there our deep layer support's about 1.5 inches deep. So what I'm going to do, it's not going to take a ton of foam. It's not going to take 2 full cans for sure, and it's going to spread pretty well under there. So I'm just spraying. I go my deep layer support first, and then I hit my shallow layer support, which generally won't take much foam at all. You're not going to see the foam snake out on the deep layer support when you're filling that bottom layer. You're not going to see the foam like snake out like you will when you're filling the shallow layer support. So you see how it blew air out of the other hole. So I was running a little low on foam, so I went ahead and did a little more. You see how it's coming out the other hole. You like to see that. You're getting good coverage at that point. And then here I went ahead, sprayed just a touch down there in that deep layer just to make sure we weren't going to have a gap in between. Generally, you like to have about 4 inches between your deep layer holes. That one was about 6 inches, so I went ahead and got some right in the middle just to make sure there wasn't going to be a gap there. So anyway, let that set up for about 2 or 3 hours. This was super firm when we came back, and it'll be fully cure after 24 hours. So if you pop that foam off of there and it's still gooey in the center, you want to go ahead and let that keep setting up. And even if you have to let it set up overnight, let it set up overnight. If you're working in cooler conditions or if it's cold outside and you got a crawl space under there, it can be cooler underneath your tub than above it. So be aware of that. If it's slow setting up, sometimes you can put a space heater in your bathroom to kind of heat it up. We've had to do that in the winter times. But just let it set up fully. You want that firm before you move forward. So here I'm just prepping around the surface. So on floor cracks, you want to take that 80 grit sandpaper and you want to sand down any kind of traction control or anything. You want to sand that smooth with your 80 grit sandpaper and get well outside of your repair area too. Now here we're doing the glass putty, and something that didn't show up in this video, and I'm not sure why, but there is the hardener. So I apply hardener. I'm not just spreading the glass putty on, but I add the hardener to it, and then I stir that up in it. So you will have a tube of blue hardener, and you'll have enough to set up your glass putty and your finish putty. It goes with both. And so just be aware of that. You'll see the ratio we use on the finish putty later. That's the same ratio that you use on the glass putty. So be aware of that. I did add hardener to the glass putty and then stirred it in, and that's what I was mixing in before I spread it on. So while the glass putty is setting up, this is the order that we go in when we're on the job. It just saves time, is you got to give that glass putty 30 minutes to set up. So in the meantime, we will go ahead and match the color. So just one thing to be aware of is as you're matching the color, a lot of times I'll figure, okay, what's the closest one? I wasn't sure if it was going to be gold white, gray white, or almond. I knew it wasn't going to be gloss white, so I kind of determine which one is the closest. That's going to be my base color, and then I work my way up as I'm matching the color. So on this one, I used gold white as my base color, and then I was adding almond to kind of darken it down. So with a repair this size, generally recommend no less than 1 ounce of resin once you've mixed it and it's matched the color. So you want at least 1 ounce. A repair this size, you're probably going to want to go ahead and push it to about 1.5 ounces of mixed resin. Um, and that's before you add your catalyst and reducer. So just be aware of that. You'll have more than enough to mix up to 1.5, 2 ounces of any one color. So you'll have plenty of resin. Now on this, take your time as you add color. So what I did here is I probably started out with about half an ounce, if not like maybe 3/4 of an ounce of gold white. And then I added some almond to it. So I don't want to start out, if I know I'm going to be shooting for about 1 to 1.5 ounces of mixed resin, I don't want to start out and put my base in there at 1.5 ounces. Okay, I want to start small, like half an ounce, and work my way up and try to hit that color even before you get to how much resin you want. So if you hit that color and you're at 3/4 of an ounce, well, at least you know about what it takes to hit that color, and you can build your mixture up to 1.5 ounces. And so just be aware of that. Now, what I'm doing here is this was an older fiberglass tub, and sometimes these things will they'll kind of get gold a little bit, or they'll kind of yellow over time. This was a pretty old tub. So what I'm doing is I took that gold dye that's included in your kits, and I took gloss white and I put it in a separate cup. So I put about half an ounce of gloss white in a separate cup because I wasn't using that, and I took that gold dye and I just put a little bit in that gloss white, and then I made a real gold solution. And so this helps you get outside of the spectrum that our resins will hit. So here we needed just a little bit more of a gold tint. So that's what I did. Um, and by separating it out into another resin like gloss white, that helps you dilute it. So don't add dye directly to your mixture. It's going to throw your color way off. So separate it out and then add it slowly like that. Now, one thing to keep in mind is gold and gray will counteract each other. So if you feel like your color is just a little too gray, then you may want to add either gold white or possibly mix up a separate solution of a gold dye like I did, and just add a little bit to knock that gray down. So as we were doing this, um, we're probably trying to counteract a little bit of a gray in there. So just go along as you do your swatches. Just put a drop on the surface, um, swirl it around until it gets sticky. You'll feel it start to kind of stick, and then dry it for about 10 or 15 seconds. The stuff is going to darken about 5 shades as it dries. So it may look a little light going on, but give it a little bit of a dry time, and you'll see kind of the true color as it darkens. So do that on every swatch. Every time you add a color, do the same thing. Stir it up real well. Wipe it off of your stick. You don't want any of the previous swatch on there. And then take your sample, drop it on there, and then swirl it around, dry it, and just take your time on this. There's no rush. You can give that glass putty all day. If you don't want to, if you get the glass putty down and you're like, I want to call it a day, call it a day. You don't have to mix your color in between. You can do the glass putty, wait for it to cure, sand it, move on to the next step, wait for the finished putty to cure, sand it, and then at the very end, you can focus solely on mixing your colors. So don't feel like you have to do it in this order. This is just the order we do it in. It saves us time on the job. It will save you time if you do want to kind of plow through the repair. Is just to knock out the color match, get your coating ready, and then once your coating's ready and that glass putty's or cured, then really you're on the downhill slope. So one thing to be aware of here, as we're kind of honing in on the right color, now we're working on our pre-val. There is something to be aware here. So one thing I was pointing at right there is I take off the filter cap on the pre-val. That is prone for clogging, so just be aware of that. Now here I'm going 1.5 ounces of mixed resin for the color. One thing to be aware is it's 4 parts resin, 1 part catalyst, 2 parts reducer. That is the minimum, okay? Now there's a thing called a meniscus when you're filling a jar like this, where the solution will actually curve up the jar, and it actually curves up the jar about 1/8 of an ounce. So just be aware of that. The minimum is 4 parts resin, 1 part catalyst, 2 parts reducer. Uh, you can be over that, so you could be like, I'd say the max would probably be like 4 parts resin, 2 parts catalyst, and 3 parts reducer. That would be fine. So kind of be in between that. You don't want to be below it. So don't be fooled by the meniscus curving up the jar. Just be aware of that. And then yeah, stir it up real well. Remove the cap, and then be aware of where that filter vent is on the backside of the uh, pre-valve. There's a little V notch in there. That's a filter vent. You always want that facing you, and then the tip facing away. So anyway, moving forward, we're sanding down the glass putty. I'm using 80 grit sandpaper, and this does not have to be perfectly smooth. Generally, I do like to get the edges feathered down, and you don't want to feel a lip around the edges, but you don't have to make it perfectly smooth. You can have little dimples in there and stuff like that. That's probably going to be there. That's what the finish putty is for. So after you get that sanded down, mostly smooth, you do want to try to get those edges feathered on that glass putty. And then we'll go and we will apply the finish putty to really make it smooth. So one thing to be aware of, I want to mention again, the glass putty, you did not see the hardener go into the glass putty at the beginning. You can go back and look at this, how I did it with the finish putty. That's how you do it with the glass putty also. So do be aware of that. The ratio is 1 to 50. That's hard to measure, but um, you can, again, that's the minimum. So you can be over that. Don't be way over it. Otherwise, you might run short on hardener if you have to. So you want to give your finish putty, a good 15 minutes or so to set up. You just want it to feel dry, not tacky, hard and dry. And then I use 120 grit sandpaper to sand the finish putty. That sands a lot easier than the glass putty, so just be aware of that. And then as you're sanding it, kind of rule of thumb is if you can feel it, you'll be able to see it. So if it has a lip around the edge, or if there's a dimple or a pit or something like that, if you can feel that, you're going to be able to see it. So the key is really sand it smooth so you can't really feel the transitions or anything like that. Now you wipe on the primer. It was real short there. About 10 seconds ago, you see me wipe on a gold solution. It's the primer. Uh, you clean it off with acetone, and then you wipe the primer on, and you just give it about 20 seconds or so. You just don't want it to look real wet when you spray it. So just give it a little time right after you wipe that primer on, and then you're good to spray. So when you're spraying, just fog it on. You're not trying to color the whole thing at once. Generally, you're going to do probably about 4 coats of color. So just fog it on, and then blow dry it for about 60 seconds in between coats. Let it really set up. On floor repairs, you don't run the risk of drips as much as you do on like wall repairs, but just be aware of that. Dry it in between, and then you can also feather out, kind of blend it in, blend it out. You'll see I kind of do that here, where I kind of blend it out and blend it in. It really matched well. Okay, and then as this cures, it's going to lose a little bit of that gloss, and then you give it 24 hours to cure, and you go back and you wet sand it. That would knock that gloss even down even more, and so this really shouldn't be very noticeable. So just go to tubrepairstore.com, get your floor crack repair kit, save yourself a ton of money.